Inspiring interviews with today's top landlords. This is the Rental Income Podcast. And now, Dan Lane.
Every once in a while, I think it's interesting to check in with someone that was on the podcast in the past and see what they're doing today. Bryan, you were with us about 2.5 years ago. Can you remind us what your portfolio looked like back then and tell us what you're doing today?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Back then, I had 2 properties. Both were 4-unit properties. Fast forward to today, I bought 16 other properties. Those are all duplexes, so total of 18 properties today.
Buying 16 duplexes in 2.5 years is pretty incredible. But when you think about what the market's been like over the last 2.5 years, there just hasn't been a lot of properties for sale. And finding 16 duplexes is a really big accomplishment. So on the show today, we're going to talk about how he did it. We'll talk about how he financed these properties. And Bryan wants to get these properties paid off. We'll talk about his plan to pay them off, and we'll see if that makes sense. Joining us on the show today from Chicago is Bryan Bokowy. We'll take a quick break to thank our sponsors. We'll come right back and we'll talk to Bryan. It's a lot of work to find a really good rental property. And when you actually find that property, you want to make sure you're working with a lender that can get that loan closed. The lender that I recommend is Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. She's a nationwide lender, and her specialty is helping investors finance rental properties. She has a ton of loan programs, and she can find something customized to you for your situation. If you want to find out more or you're ready to get started today, just go to ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com. NMLS 42056.
Rental Income Podcast.
Bryan, so I want to make sure I got this right. So in the last 2.5 years, you've bought 16 duplexes?
That's correct.
Wow, that is really incredible. So let's walk through like the time frame that it took to do all this. So when you bought your first property, that was 2018, right?
Right. Yeah, it was June of 2018.
And then it took you a few years to buy your next one. Right?
Yeah. It took me a few years. I spent a lot of the funds on that first property, rehabbing it and getting it up to snuff before I wanted to get another property under me.
All right. So what year was it when you bought that second property?
Second property was June of 2021.
Okay. And then what changed? Like, how did it become a lot easier, or how did you start growing a lot faster?
Yeah. So what I was able to do is I was getting creative on getting deals more at a discount. So what I was doing was cold calling mom and pop landlords, and was able to get my first, I would say 3 or 4 properties at a discount. And I was buying so under market. You know, some of these properties at the time were 150, 170,000. So I was able to get them way under market, and that's how I was able to get the first couple duplexes there. And we really went from there. But I was using my W-2 income at the time. I'm in sales, so anytime I made commission, I would put that aside and save that for down payments on properties.
All right. So let me make sure I get this right here. So you were saving money. You were buying properties that were off market from, I guess, like tired landlords?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
People that were just, mostly baby boomers that were ready to just be done with everything. And some were moving to Florida, or, some just wanted to sell. Their kids didn't want them. And I was glad to take them off their hands.
Okay. So then you found those properties, you got a really good deal on it. And then did you buy it with a 20% down payment or buy them?
Yeah. You know what? It was a mixture between, I think the first 1 or 2 were 20% down. And then I was working with a local credit union in Indiana, and they came out with a program just specifically for investors, and it was a 10% down program. So I was able to pick up, I think, 6 or 7 properties for 10% down just by working with this credit union before they got rid of that program.
Okay.
So I really took advantage of that 10% down on quite a few properties.
That's smart. Okay, so you found an opportunity. I mean, you found a good financing program and just capitalized on that while it was there.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay, so buying the properties below market value, did that help you buy more properties?
Yeah, it did. Finding some of these properties, given the fact that they were off market and below market, I did some small cosmetic repairs to get these rents up to market rent. And then when I went to go get them appraised, they were appraising for $100,000 over what I bought them for. So, like I said, 150, 170,000 is what I bought them for, and they were appraising at 265, 270,000. So, I decided to take cash out and refinance some of these properties, and that helped me make a lot more purchases here in a very quick time span.
Wow. So every time you were buying a property, you were making about 100,000,
Exactly.
and then you would refinance, take that money out, and then use that to buy another property.
That's correct. And this was, in 2021, so rates were still fairly low in the mid fours, low fives. So there's still great rental properties that cash flow
Yeah.
great today.
And you weren't having to do major rehabs. It sounds like these were just like small cosmetic repairs you had to make.
Yeah, small cosmetic stuff. It was maybe some paint, some flooring, maybe a new appliance or two, some new blinds. New flooring and a fresh coat of paint goes a long way in a rental property,
Sure.
and it's fairly cheap if you do it the right way. So just doing some of those simple items, you can really get up to market rent in a cheap way.
Yeah. All right. So you were buying them for about 150 and they were worth 250 after you fixed them up. What were they renting for
They're renting for anywhere between 1150 and 1195
on each side?
on
Or-
each side.
Okay.
Exactly.
Wow. Were you buying in the same neighborhoods?
Not in the same. There's a couple towns in Northwest Indiana that I'm buying in, but they're all within, at the worst, a 20-minute drive from each other. So
Okay.
so all in the same area.
All right, let's walk through the time frame of when you did this. So you said 2021 is when you started doing this. How many properties did you buy that year?
So in 2021, I bought four properties. One was the 4 unit, and then three other duplexes.
Okay. And then 2022, how many?
So 2022, I bought 10, and
Wow.
that's really where a lot of the growth came from. A lot of those cash out refinances were taking place then, as well as I was able to liquidate some old retirement accounts, old 401ks from employers that I no longer worked for, and I put those in real estate. And I just doing the numbers, I was getting a much higher return on investing in these rental properties than having my money sit in the 401k.
People always say not to do that. Like, were you nervous at all about taking the money out of retirement?
No, I had a mentor at the time that I really ran a lot of this through, as well as some other individuals that have done the same thing that are very active in the real estate community, and just talking through it, and realizing that investing the way I was investing in real estate was getting a better return on my money. It really didn't seem so scary, I guess.
Okay.
Once we were able to talk it through.
Did you get killed on taxes that year?
I didn't so much. When I was taking the 401ks out, I held 20% back for taxes, and then you did have to pay a 10% penalty. The good thing though is that I was able to bonus depreciate all of my rental properties. So as far as a tax shelter, I was really able to use a lot of those a lot of the properties that I bonus depreciated as a tax savings.
Right. Okay. So that kind of offset that. Okay. That makes
Right.
sense. All right. So in 2022, you bought 10 properties. And then 2023, last year, how many did you buy?
So last year I bought 3 properties, and I slowed down a little bit, and that's because there's 2 properties that I decided to cash out and refinance, and I took out almost 110,000. And instead of growing my portfolio with those funds, I thought it would be smart to maybe slow down a little bit, put a lot of those funds back into the properties by upgrading the maintenance, all the mechanicals. There's some cosmetic things that need to be upgraded. So, in turn, by doing that, I was able to raise rents. And when I did that, I got better tenants in, and I got less calls as well. There's less things breaking down because I invested back in those properties. So I think in the long term, instead of continuing to grow, I have a much more functional portfolio now
Yeah.
that causes a lot less headaches and cash flows a lot more.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's not all about growth and buying as many properties as you can. I think what you did makes a lot of sense that, take the time into fixing the properties up, make them nicer, get better tenants, get higher rents. I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. And that was, I think, a good use of your time and your resources. What about this year? Have you bought any properties so far this year?
Yeah, I have. I bought 1 property in February of this year, and I'm currently getting that rehabbed and up to market rent. And I like where my portfolio is at. I like the size of it. I've done a ton of growth, and I think what I'd like to do is pay down some of the high risk loans that I have, on top of refinancing some if rates end up coming down this year. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to start flipping some houses. I should have my first flip under contract in the middle of May. And with the income I make from the houses that I start to flip, I will be paying off some of the portfolio. But I'm also going to continue to add to the portfolio, but just not as much as I have in the past.
Yeah. So how many rental units do you have right now?
So I have 18 properties, 40 total
40
doors.
total doors. Okay. And how much total rent do you bring in every month?
So I have 46,000 that comes in rent every month, and 33,000 of total monthly expenses that goes out every month, and that includes PITI and other utility or monthly expenses that I
Okay.
have.
All right. So 46,000 a month in rent, 33,000 in mortgage, taxes, insurance. So you've got about 13,000 left over. And, of course, you're going to have repairs here and there, a vacancy, but like on a typical month, you're going to have about 13,000.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
13,000.
So I guess what you're saying is that if you can get that $33,000 in mortgage expenses down, that's going to increase that's going to increase your cash flow, take some of the risk out of your portfolio. So that's kind of what you want to do.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I would love to have the opportunity in the next 2 years or so, if I choose to, just leave my W-2 job once and for all, and never have to, step foot in corporate America or trading time for money. That's really the goal. And I
Yeah.
think with also starting to flip houses on the side, it would be a nice project in early retirement.
Yeah. I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's like, you don't need to just keep buying properties to keep buying properties. I mean, at the end of the day, you want cash flow that's going to give you freedom to do whatever you want to do. And I think it makes a lot of sense. I think that sometimes people get rid of their debt too early and it stops them from growing. But in your case, I mean, you've got $46,000 a month in rent. I mean, if you can get your debt down, even to go from $33,000 of expenses a month down to $23,000, that's going to make a huge difference in your life to have an extra $10,000 a month.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's that would be life-changing for sure.
Yeah. So like on a typical month, how much do you usually spend in expenses?
Yeah, so the seasons definitely regulate how much more you're gonna pay. I would guess on average it's about 3,000 a month.
Okay.
The summer months are really good in that we're not facing a lot of the elements, but so there's much less in repairs that I'll spend in the summer months versus the winter months.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. All right. So you're at $10,000 a month in profit. And is that what you're thinking? Like maybe get it to 20, or are you thinking you want to get everything paid off at some point?
No, I thought my number was always 20,000 a month. If I can hit that, then I would safely, be able to walk away from my job and do other things that matter to me.
Now, as far as you mentioned earlier about you have some high risk debt, what is that?
Yeah, so early on, I was able to get some 30-year money, 30-year fixed loans, and obviously that's the safest kind of debt out there. After you get so many loans, you have to move over to commercial loans, and a lot of those are a little bit riskier, where you'll have 5-year fixed rate loans that balloon after 5 or 3 years, whatever you agree on with your lender. I think those are a little riskier just because, if something were to happen with the bank and they don't give you an opportunity to refinance after that fixed period, they can call the loan due. And really everything you worked for on that property, you're going to have to, fast fire sell it, and it's not going to be worth your while, and you're not going to make as much money on the investment that you thought. So my thinking is, instead of worrying about that, I can potentially pay those properties off, or refinance into 30-year money, or potentially ARMs. If I do have an ARM, it's going to fluctuate monthly, but at least it won't balloon after a certain period.
Why did you take out those loans to begin with? That just sounds almost like you're asking for trouble with a loan like that.
Yeah, it seems like everybody in the industry does it, and I honestly did it so I can grow as quickly as I did, and it was a great way to get the loan. I still have a couple years before they're called due, so I do have time to either pay them off or refinance them into a little bit safer debt. But it's good to get ahead of it and start making a plan now before those do get called due.
How many of those loans do you have?
So on the commercial side, I have, let's see, about 8 of those loans. Mostly they're 5-year fixed, and they don't come due until 2027 or so. I do have 2 that are coming up here that are going to be due next year. So those are 3-year fixed. So those 2 are the ones that I'm really focused on, either refinancing or paying down first.
And then the other loans, are they 30-year fixed mortgages?
Yeah, the majority of the other ones are 30-year fixed, which I'm really happy with.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like, definitely get rid of those high risk loans. I mean, that is I guess like that would personally scare me a little bit. So do you have a plan on on how you're going to pay those mortgages down?
Yeah, so I opened up a separate bank account, and basically with my cash flow, I'm putting so much in that bank account, and once I save up enough to pay off a mortgage, I'll do that.
Okay, so you're going to save up the cash and then actually send it a big check to pay that mortgage off.
Yeah, that's the plan right
Okay.
now.
Have you thought about paying them down monthly? So say in a month, if you have $10,000 laying around, just sending in 10,000 versus saving up the whole mortgage.
I haven't really thought about that. I just kind of figured once I had enough for the entire mortgage, I would just pay it all off at once. But um, I know that if I pay every little bit monthly, I would save a lot more on interest. Is that
Right.
right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking is that so if say for example your mortgage is $100,000. So in month 1 the interest you pay is based on $100,000. But then if you send in $10,000 extra, the mortgage payment stays the same for the next month, but the amount that goes to interest is based off $90,000. So you end up paying less interest and more of your future payments are going to principal. So it'll actually help you pay down your mortgage a little bit faster if you send in those payments monthly or whenever you can versus saving it all up and sending in one big lump sum.
Right. And you know what? I have heard people talk about that. I think that's something I need to revisit and look at because you're right. If I can save interest in the long term, why not do that?
Yeah. Yeah. And just make sure you keep some cash on the side just in case you get hit with a big repair or something. But I think, once you have enough money in savings that you're comfortable, I think in your case, I think it makes sense to get those mortgages paid off. Well, Bryan, I think you got a great plan. I really think you're on the right track here, and I think you're going to get a few of these mortgages paid off and going to increase your cash flow.
I'm excited for my plan here, and I think I can really achieve my financial freedom goals in the next couple years as long as I stick to the plan of paying down some debt and potentially flipping some houses on the side here to increase that debt pay down.
I agree with you. And I think your number one priority is getting out of those high risk loans. I think that's the only thing that could really take you down. And speaking of loans, that is a great transition to thank our sponsor today, Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. Chaley is a nationwide lender, and her specialty is helping investors finance rental properties. She has a ton of loan programs, and she actually, I think, would be a good person for Bryan to talk to. She can get Bryan out of those loans and get him into safe, secure 30-year fixed loans. If you want to find out more or you want to set up a time to talk to Chaley personally, you can reach out to her at ridgelendinggroup.com, NMLS 42056. Thank you so much for checking out today's podcast. I'll be back with a new episode next Tuesday. My name is Dan Lane, and this has been the Rental Income Podcast.